Well, I don't know if you watched it on Friday. It was absolutely riveting to me. The summit between Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump. It was historic in a way. I mean, first of all, it ended the attempt to isolate and sanction Vladimir Putin for his invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. Both the isolation and the sanctions are still in place, I should say. For example, the Russian president's plane needed to refuel. Normally that would be done electronically, but they literally had to pay cash because Russia is banned from using any banking system in the West, including credit cards and the SWIFT system. So even in Putin's arrival, sanctions and isolation were in place, but it was so symbolic, and you could see that Vladimir Putin was quite pleased to be there, although Donald Trump too seemed quite pleased to end an era of unsuccessful responses to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Whatever you think of that war, and I think it's clear it was an aggressive war by Russia, the sanctions just weren't working. In fact, it retooled the Russian economy to aim towards China. Russia found new markets for its energy, and it found new vendors for its retail goods. I just don't think it actually worked. I don't know if you remember, I did a story on this a while ago. Despite the sanctions, during the war, Russia overtook Germany as I think it was the fourth largest economy in the world, but Russia moved ahead of Germany. How is that possible? Part of it, of course, is Germany is sabotaging itself by investing in costly and destructive green energy programs. But nonetheless, it's quite something for Russia in the middle of a war with sanctions to actually grow bigger than Germany. Putin and Trump shaking hands, talking at length, was an image that the Russians were delighted to show because it means the marginalization is over. However, you don't want to just look at it from the point of view of the West. Russia was never marginalized in other parts of the world, like the Middle East, Asia, or Africa. So that was the first step in getting a normalized kind of communication going on. And there was a tremendous reaction by the mainstream media to criticize Trump for even having that and for certainly granting this symbolism to Putin. But I think that's the thing about peace deals. You make peace with your enemies, not with your friends. Now, Trump was insistent that this wasn't his war, which is true. It's a war between Russia and Ukraine. So I think Trump was extra repellent to that accusation that he was somehow doing something he ought not to. So that was Friday. And as soon as it was over, in fact, it all happened at a military base in Alaska, which is very interesting in itself. It was a very quick journey. It was about equidistant between Moscow and Washington, D.C. Both leaders had to fly in there. It was on a military base, which I think made it very secure. And I have to say, in the back of my mind, the whole time I was thinking, there are a lot of forces that don't want that peace deal to happen. And the chances of the Russian leader's plane being shot down by someone who didn't want a peace deal were real. And I think you could see some of the protections taken when American F-22 fighters actually escorted the Russian plane. Perhaps it was just symbolism, but there was a lot going on there. Anyways, that was on Friday. Trump and his lead negotiator, Witkoff is his name, who also is running the Hamas negotiations, plus Marco Rubio got on the phone right away with the other European allies and brought them up to speed. And they decided to have a meeting today in Washington, D.C. Very quick. Trump doesn't waste time. He wants to get this thing done. Remember, he said he thought it could be solved in a day. He was using hyperbole, but still he wants to move quickly. And so wouldn't you know it, half a dozen leading democratic leaders from France, from the UK, from Italy, from Germany, the head of NATO, the head of the European Union, came to Washington, D.C. at Trump's request. And again, that was taken as a sign of weakness by the regime media who said, aha, they're here to oppose you, Donald Trump, who said, no, actually, I invited them, of what he called the coalition of the willing. Chancellor Merz was there from Germany. And there was a guy named Alexander Stubb. Now, without Googling it, do you know who Alexander Stubb is? And I confess I didn't. So don't feel bad if you didn't. He's the leader of Finland, which is a pretty small country. It's not that small physically, but population-wise, about 5 million people, so less than the Greater Toronto Area. And you might be thinking, why was the leader of Finland invited to this meeting, but not Mark Carney? Canada is 8 times bigger in terms of population. In terms of committing to Ukraine's military, Canada was disproportionately spendy, about 20 billion Canadian dollars, if I'm doing the conversion correctly, much more than Finland. I don't know if it was an animosity between Trump and Carney. It seems like Zelensky didn't lift a finger to get Mark Carney there. It was just sort of odd because it was sort of like the G7 meeting without the Japanese and without the Canadians. I know why the Japanese weren't there. They're really not involved in this Ukraine war. They have not been diplomatically or financially a part of it. But is there a country that has been noisier about its support for Ukraine than Canada, first under Trudeau and then under Mark Carney? And he simply wasn't invited. I found that remarkable and so interesting. And he tried to fill the void, Mark Carney did, by having a meeting with Doug Ford.
How are you talking?
Look, well, actually, I'm just going to meet with Minister LeBlanc. We'll have a discussion of that and important discussion with Premier Ford this morning on a variety of aspects for the Ontario economy, the Canadian economy, which of course includes trade, but goes much more to the issues that we can control and how we build out from within.
Like what would some examples be?
Well, we'll talk about the housing sector. We'll talk about steel, auto, new sectors of the economy, including artificial intelligence.
Doug Ford thought he would badmouth Trump a bit more. That seems to be all Ford really does. Maybe that's part of the reason why Canada wasn't invited, because every time Doug Ford, who is a proxy of Mark Carney now, talks, it's to insult Trump in a way that I think anyone who has been following Trump for any time at all knows that if you personally prick him, if you personally attack him, he remembers that. And it can't be an accident that Doug Ford is doing his best to keep Trump hostile towards Canada. I just simply don't know how that works to Doug Ford's advantage. I don't get it. If I was Doug Ford, I would be worried about the auto sector, which the majority of which is in Ontario. I don't understand it. I don't understand how it's good for the country, but that's Doug Ford for you. And Mark Carney, of course, doesn't say a word against it. Just really, really weird.
Donald Trump is so unpredictable. I don't even know if he knows what he's doing tomorrow morning. So let's start focusing on creating that environment.
But is there an acceptance? Is there an acceptance, I guess, from leaders that we'll just have the tariffs?
Again, he's the prime minister will speak on that, but the president is unpredictable. He'll come out with some cockamamie thing tomorrow that we don't even know about.
So
right?
do you think that Mark Carney is being too elbows down in response
Not
to
at
that
all.
unpredictability?
Not at all. He's doing an incredible job. He's working collaboratively with 12 other premiers and myself, and working as Team Canada. And he's doing a very, very good job, in my opinion. Put in his position, dealing with Donald Trump. Let's stop worrying about Donald Trump. We'll start focusing on Ontario and Canada.
Oh, by the way, Doug Ford was asked if he has any advice for the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre. And the advice was, to the leader of the opposition, don't oppose. He actually said that.
Premier, today is Pierre Poilievre's by-election. If he gets elected, I'm wondering, what's your advice to him going into the fall sitting of the Parliament?
Work with the Prime Minister.
How so?
Let's Team Canada. Let's put our political stripes aside and start working together collectively on large infrastructure projects, on other areas that he can cooperate with the government.
Last question. Would you have plans to meet with Poilievre to push that message and make sure that he is working with the Prime Minister?
All I want to do is move forward collectively as a government. I don't care about political stripes. The person I'm working with right now is the Prime Minister of the day. And as far as I'm concerned, he's doing a really, really good job considering the position he's been put in. I challenge anyone to try to deal with Donald Trump, myself included. He's a different type of cat. But we're united. We know what we need to do. And we know that we need to cut the regulatory burdens off of companies, lower taxes, put money back into people's pockets, support companies that need investment to grow and expand here.
Yeah, what a dummy. I tell you one thing, let me just tell you a promise. If Doug Ford ever runs for the Conservative Party leadership, I will do everything in my power to make that not happen. I think he's a disgrace to the word conservative. And I don't think he's why Pierre Poilievre lost the last election, but he certainly tried his best to make that happen. I don't know what his plan is, but I'll do my best to make sure Doug Ford's plans are foiled. Back to Washington, D.C. It was a different spirit than the last time Vladimir Zelensky came. So you had meeting number one with Vladimir Putin, which lasted longer than most observers thought. It was about 3.5 hours on Friday. Zelensky was here, and along with all those other leaders I mentioned, they had a one-on-one meeting, Trump and Zelensky, and then they had the group meeting. And the spirit was very different. I mean, last time, I don't know if you remember, it was a disaster. Zelensky was picking fights with J.D. Vance and Trump, and boy, Vance and Trump were pushing back. Let me just play a little bit of that to you. It was one of the most shocking things I had ever seen in the Oval Office. Just a reminder, take a look.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know that.
bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
I'm not
You're
dictating.
in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
You will
good.
feel influence.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the very
bad position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From
it.
the very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a good
Brown,
position.
I
You
was
don't have
in
the cards right now. With us, you start
I'm
having
not
cards.
playing
But
cards.
right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
Yeah, you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War
What do you-
III.
what do you
You're
think about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's
with
back
all
to you.
respect to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
I'm wearing
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once?
Well, this time Zelensky actually wore a suit to begin with. And he said the word thank you 10 times in the meeting that at least the journalists heard. So I think Zelensky realized Trump and Putin have pretty much come to an agreement. This is his opportunity to maybe tweak it. But I'll tell you my thoughts about where this is going to go in a moment. Trump was right, though, when he said that no one else could possibly make this deal happen. No one could chair a meeting with both Putin and Zelensky. No one could summon Putin and summon 7 European leaders and do this. I mean, who would do it? Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer. I mean, Trump likes to take credit for these things, but what if it's actually true? Here, take a look.
So people can say whatever they want. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to get the Russian side to agree to things that they don't want to agree to if we're going to have peace. If not, there'll just be a war. They'll keep killing each other. And life will go on in America and in the rest of the world, but not for Ukraine. So the president has invested a lot of time in trying to bring an end to this war. He deserves credit for doing that. He gets criticism for doing that. He could have just let this war go on. The president could have just said, this is Biden's war. It started under him. We'll do what we can for Ukraine, but we're going to focus on other things. He could have easily said that. But he's the only leader in the world that can get Putin to a meeting to talk about serious things.
I mean, they're mad. The media is mad. I think in some ways they loved this war, which is weird. They hated that the war was started, but they loved Ukraine's defense of it. And they accused Marco Rubio of platforming Putin. But I just don't know that when the leader of the world's largest tactical nuclear weapon country a massive country, a large economy in the middle of a war. I mean, he's on the Security Council. I just don't think Trump was giving him those things. He has them, whether or not the West acknowledges them. I think there are some people in the West who think that Ukraine is winning the war, thinks that the sanctions are working. I just don't think that's the case.